Hey everyone, I'm Alan Thrall here at Untamed Strength Gym in Sacramento, California. I want to show you a few different approaches for fixing a round back deadlift. You might be said round back deadlifter, or maybe you're a coach or a trainer and your client has this problem. A few things first. Number one, these drills are meant for someone who can't set their back or keep their back tight on any reps. I'm not talking about a powerlifter whose back only rounds over at maximum weights. Again, it's for people who don't have the kinesthetic understanding or the body awareness that's required to keep your back flat or tight. Number two, a little bit of back grounding is fine. I don't say this to be contrarian. I'm not putting out a blanket statement like technique doesn't matter. I'm saying this because there's some truth to it when I say a little bit of back grounding is fine. Your spine is meant to flex and extend. A lot of very strong people purposefully do this under load to strengthen their back. I don't want you to be afraid of lifting weights because your back rounds a little bit. I don't want you to suffer from paralysis by analysis and overanalyze everything about lifting weights. Number three, rolling off of point number two, a little bit of back grounding is fine, especially if it's dosed correctly. Your tissues adapt to the stress you place on them. If you start light and you're smart about adding weight, you'll most likely be fine. But if you consistently max out your tissues every week past their capacity, you're increasing the likelihood of injury. This is why I'm not overly concerned with beginners who struggle to keep their back flat while deadlifting. They're using light weights, and their tissues can handle those light weights. They're learning, so it's okay as you learn and get stronger. A go-hard lifter who's consistently maxing out each week with ugly form is more of a concern to me. They are starting to flirt with loads that are over their capacity. And number four, your flat back might look different than my flat back. Some people have naturally more or less curve in their spine. You can observe this just by looking at people's natural posture. So if natural resting posture varies, deadlift starting positions will also vary. When I'm coaching a beginner, I like to tell them to stick their chest out proud, usually towards the ground a few feet in front of them. Put wrinkles in the back of your shirt. That end product might be more or less extended from person to person. So wherever you start, try to hold that same position as you pull the weight. I don't want to see immediate rounding and loss of tightness as you pull. This means the muscles that you're trying to train aren't doing the best job that they could. I want those muscles to work hard so they can get stronger. Your back is trying to remain rigid, so the force you generate from your legs can transfer through your back and into the barbell. It's sort of like getting really tight before descending on a squat, only to dive bomb and fold over as you stand up. You're not holding a strong position throughout the movement, and I want to fix that. Try these corrections that I'm about to list and see which ones work best. I have placed them in order that I would use if I was to triage this issue, but you can use whatever order you'd like. You can also use a combination of these steps to achieve what you're looking for. Number one, toes out, knees out. This is nice and simple and very quick. Pointing your toes out and pushing your knees out against your arms might be just enough to create some space between your front porch and the top of your thighs. Having this extra space allows you to extend your back, which extends the front of your body too. If your toes and knees are straight forward, you might feel like the top of your thighs are pushing your guts in, which rounds your lower back once you begin to pull. Number two, ditch the belt. If you are wearing a belt when you deadlift and you can't maintain back tightness, especially lower back tightness, the belt might be making things worse. It's ironic that some people use a belt to help keep their back tight, but it only ends up making it harder for you to keep your back tight and your midsection braced. If a belt is worn too tight or too low, or the belt itself is just too thick or it's too wide, it can actually push your guts in. This, coupled with bending over to grab the bar, causes your stomach to be pushed in by the top of your thighs, just like I talked about with point number one. For some people, wearing a belt for deadlifts is not as comfortable as it is for squats. This is usually because your squat stance is wider and your torso might be a little bit more vertical, but when you deadlift, your stance is narrower and you probably have to bend over more to grab the bar. Here's some powerlifting knowledge. Some of the best squatters in the world are very stocky and thick-waisted because that helps when you squat. But their deadlift is quite a bit lower than their squat because that stocky, thick waist is usually a disadvantage in the deadlift. And some of the best deadlifters in the world are what people would call thin-waisted deadlifters, maybe a lanky type. I've noticed that people who lose a noticeable amount of body weight tend to maintain their deadlift strength pretty well because the starting position actually feels better without extra weight around their midsection. And this all just illustrates that a belt increases your waist circumference, which might work against you. Keyword here is might. This is only a problem for a minority of people. Deadlifts without a belt feel better than deadlifts with a belt for some people. Number 3, set your back at the top. Rather than trying to set your back in a good position after grabbing the barbell, when you're already bent over, try getting your back tight at the top. As you descend, keep your arms straight, pointing down, push your hips back, and only bend your knees enough to let them travel into the insides of your arms. Do not let them pass in front of your arms. Once you can put your hands on the barbell, grab it and go, keeping that same position as you pull. Number 4, touch and go deadlifts. Now that you're at the top, keep that position as you lower the bar back down to the floor. Pause on the floor without losing tightness, without losing any tension, then pull the next rep. At the top, keep that position, lower the bar by pushing your hips back, sliding the bar down your legs, pause on the floor, stand back up. Now, most people do a controlled drop at the top of a deadlift, and this is fine if you have no problem resetting each rep. If you're struggling to get tight against the bar, you can perform these touch and go reps. I put touch and go in quotes because it's not a touch and go deadlift where you just barely tap the ground or where you slam the bar against the ground and use momentum to carry you through to the next rep. I want the plates to fully touch the ground, fully deload on the ground. You'll pause, then perform your next rep, staying tight the entire set, holding your position the entire set. Number 5, tempo. One unique difference between the deadlift and the squat and bench is the fact that the deadlift does not start with an eccentric or a lengthening or a loading portion. It starts with a concentric effort. For beginners, this makes getting tight before the lift even more difficult. Some lifters go from 0 to 100 miles per hour, no tension to maximum effort. And during this explosive effort, they lose any tension that they might have had before the bar left the floor. It's not a matter of just getting tight, it's getting tight against the bar. Pulling slowly throughout the entire movement might give them time to focus on keeping their back tight. I like to suggest holding your back isometrically, then pushing with the legs. Again, slowing down gives the lifter more time to think, and more time to contemplate why they are voluntarily subjecting themselves to this torture. The slow motion pull should be exactly that, slow motion. The speed should not change throughout the movement. I would suggest using a tempo on the way up and down. Number 6, a block pull. Block pull refers to propping the weight up so that the bar is at a higher starting position. Standard plates on the floor will result in about a 9-inch bar height. My suggestion is to use blocks to raise the bar to anywhere between 12 to 15 inches is pretty common. You can also use wagon wheels or do rack pulls where you use the safeties in a squat rack to raise the barbell, plates not even touching the ground. But beware, this can damage the bar if you're using a lot of weight. Sometimes the bar is just too low for a lifter's current mobility. Raising the barbell will meet the lifter where they're at. Try to find at what height the lifter has to start rounding over at the back in order to reach the bar. Then prop the weight up just above that. Over time, you can try lowering the start height. Number 7, sumo deadlift. Contrary to popular belief, the sumo deadlift is not much different than a conventional deadlift in terms of muscles used, muscle activation, and range of motion. The difference between sumo and conventional is about as much as the difference between your normal, moderate grip bench press and a close grip bench press. Maybe not even that. The extreme conventional deadlift with the heels touching versus the extreme sumo deadlift with toes out to the plates is where the differences become very noticeable. But if your grip remains the same and you just move your feet just inside of your hands or just outside of your hands, it has minimal impact on your hip height and your starting position. The narrow stance sumo deadlift might free up some space for your front porch. Your stomach won't be pushed in by the top of your thighs, which should allow more space for you to set your back. Number 8, Romanian deadlift. Last but not least, if things are just not clicking, you might just do Romanian deadlifts for a few weeks or a few months. The Romanian deadlift combines a number of the steps I just listed. It starts at the top, ends at the top. You use a tempo on the descent as you lower the bar, and you can perform touch and go reps. When performing the Romanian deadlift, use the same stance and grip that you would use for deadlifts from the floor. Push your hips back throughout the entire movement. Never let your hips drop down. Think hips back, not down. Knees should be unlocked, not hyperextended, but they should not move forward. You are not actively bending your knees as you lower the bar. Keep your knees behind your arms. That's it. Thanks for watching, and always remember,
Train on time!